Professor Skolimowski, you have written many books on philosophy, taught the subject at many universities, and are a champion of living philosophy. Can you tell us very briefly, why is philosophy important?
Yes, philosophy is our oxygen. Yes, our psychic oxygen, without which we are suffocated. Furthermore, philosophy is important because without it we suffer myopia, or a form of blindness, and thus cannot see what is right and what is not right, and therefore we cannot live right. Our world is wrapped in a thick fog, and philosophy is precisely this agency that enables us to dispel this fog and make our life clear, coherent, and meaningful.
Can you elaborate on this point a little bit?
Well then, philosophy is the light of lucid logos, the capacity to know who we are as fully fledged human beings, not some kind of ciphers and mindless consumers of plastic goodies. To live with a full awareness of our world, which, as we know, is pervaded with stress and confusion, requires, yes, a philosophical attitude. This means a sense of existence which is somehow above the tumultuous noise and continuous stress, which push us out of balance, out of harmony, out of our sense of well-being.
Are there some other arguments which would tell us that philosophy is, in fact, good for us?
Yes, there are some, and important ones too. If I may put it like that, philosophy is a particular form of hygiene. Yes, hygiene in the sense that we use the term ordinarily. We know how important is hygiene for our physical well-being, for washing our bodies, because if we do not use it, we literally stink. And I am going to suggest that if we do not have this special mental hygiene which philosophy can provide, in a sense we stink and rot inside. So when it is in its place and functioning well, philosophy prevents us from all kinds of infections, cuts, infirmities, and diseases, not necessarily physical, but also mental and spiritual. When philosophy is removed from our life, we are simply vulnerable, weakened, and our natural immunity, yes, our natural immunity is undermined. I mean immunity in a larger sense, which includes resilience to rubbish, manipulation, and humbug.
But why is this immunity and resilience so important for our times?
Well, because we have been outrageously manipulated and even twisted by vested interests, including power-crazy politicians. And the consequence has been a variety of civilizational diseases: meaninglessness, existential vacuum, confusion, how shall I say, being lost in the world, and quite a variety of depressions, not to mention more serious diseases.
And all these things have been the result of removing these protective natural shields of philosophy from our lives. Is that true?
Correct.
So
and also from our thinking and our values. It is not only our philosophy as a philosophical discipline that was removed to us, but the capacity to think right, to think well, and to have values supported by good philosophy. Because ultimately, in my opinion, philosophy is a good medicine, in the ancient sense that medicine men were not only delivering medicine, they were also healers, they were also seers. And there is this far-reaching element in philosophy, when it is in its place, that enables us to sort out our thought and order our lives. And this function is not only intellectual, but also moral and related to healing.
Well, you know, most people don't see it that way. They question the value of philosophy. So I guess I'm wondering, is it really true that philosophy really is so important to our lives?
Well, I'll have to insist, yes, it is, to our individual lives and our social existence. Yet, here is the rub. We need to be philosophical enough to perceive in depth the real causes of our demise, of our myopias, and our suffocation and suffering.
Well, if that's true, it seems that we have a paradox in our times. Why is philosophy doing so poorly if we have so many professional philosophers and thousands of professors of philosophies at our universities?
Yes, it is a very good question. We have so many philosophers, but not much of genuine philosophy. Why is that so? Because the philosophers are part of the problem and not part of the solution. And I must really emphasize this. They are part of the problem and not part of the solution. They are specialists in narrow disciplines, beyond which they do not see the world. They inadvertently contribute to the mistaken view of the world, in which atoms and quantities are hailed as kings, while qualities and the meaning of life are considered as paupers or even as non-existent.
So why as a society, why do we tolerate this state of affairs?
Yes, another good question. Well, because we have been conditioned that only specialists, the people of narrow views, are important and valuable, while wisdom is not to be trusted. Why? Because it is too large and intangible. Therefore, philosophy is not to be trusted either, hence the paradox.
So we have another pathology on our hands.
Indeed we do. We desperately seek, on the one hand, our inner self, our wholeness, our center, which are based on wholeness and meaning. But we deride in the public realm wisdom and philosophy, and there is this kind of pathological split within us. We know that we cannot live by atoms alone, and yet we behave as if splintered world is all there is.
So basically you're advocating a system that you call living philosophy. I guess we'd like to know really what are its main characteristics?
Very well then, it is a philosophy that is supremely aware that we human beings are part of a larger world. This larger world and our thinking of it must be woven into one coherent whole. We are, and this is an important point, we are the weavers and we are the weave. The human being is the central axis of our knowledge and of the entire universe.
So I guess I think you want to say that the human being probably should not be suppressed by our knowledge of the physical world. Is that true?
Absolutely so, because in the plethora of the facts of the physical world, we are losing the sense of the whole world. We must create philosophies which are mindful and caring and which continually enhance the phenomenon of man, the phenomenon of the human, and the deeper aspects of our existence.
So in one sentence, what is living philosophy?
Very well. Living philosophy is the reassertion of the centrality of the human in the whole universe. This is how Socrates conceived of his philosophy. Living philosophy must be nourishing to human understanding, to human mind, to human heart. Living philosophy rejects knowledge and philosophies which push the human to the margin and degrade the phenomenon of the human and of the men and women.
So it would seem, and tell me if I'm right or not, it seems that in the whole picture of living philosophy, that spirituality then belongs to philosophy, and it's a proper part of philosophy rather than a part of religion.
Very much so. I really do think so. Traditionally, as we know, spirituality has been in the domain of religions and often monopolized by them. But traditional religions in our times have been spiritually vacuous and unable to provide spiritual substance and guide our inner life.
Would you suggest that this is true all over the world?
Well, I think that there is a tendency in the world, at least in the thinking part of the world, that this may be so. For we can see it in many parts of the world, a movement away from religious dogmatic spirituality based on religion alone, which so often spells our confinement and slavery, away from those traditional dogmatically and dogma-based religion and religious spirituality to what I call individual spirituality, which is the search for the inner God. This inner God spells out our freedom and deeper inner fulfillment. Indeed, this is a significant philosophical shift and a triumph of freedom and logos over the dogma and confinement. And only philosophy can secure it for us, this kind of freedom from dogma and tethers to the perspective of being self-master of your destiny through your individual spirituality.
Is philosophy really up to this great task?
It is. It must be. Because if it is not philosophy, what else?